Hello, and welcome to a special presentation. I'm happy to have with me today Anna Gopoian from TriCircle. And today we're going to be talking about a special project that she has that I've been familiar with for a while, but I wanted to give her an opportunity to share it with a greater audience. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mhm.
I heard about your project through the documentary Silence in the Streets. I recently saw that documentary shown at the Guard. It was great, and I was so surprised and happy to see you in it because I've
Mm.
known you for a while now. You've been a great community partner. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to focus on this project today and share it with a wider audience. And with that, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us about the project.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Anna Gopian and TriCircle Restoration, two companies created at the same time intended to complement each other. So I'm going to share my screen because within the presentation I created for you guys, it's shorter than it can be. It's longer than some may want. And when it comes to this kind of data, I know it can sometimes be challenging, and I just want people to know that Um, we're here if you need us. That's not a problem. And oops, I'm not sure that I did that correctly. Let's see, share screen here and here. There we go. Now we're going to want a slideshow start from the beginning. Come on now, you can do it. There we go. All right, those are the two companies, and they are as much different as they are the same because their intention is to help folks to better understand, the many facets of addiction, addictive behaviors, and not just the individuals that may be affected, but how addiction affect the whole family and its system. And then I personally had found my own pathway of recovery back in July 13th, 1995, and then been given the opportunity to share many different things in many different platforms in many different places. But my hope is to continue to share that. I believe isolation, shame, guilt, stigma are just as detrimental as the disease. So I want to make sure that I have a hand in making some differences and changes in towards the resources. This is just a brief warning. It's two projects that I'm going to overview briefly. One, the Paraphernalia project, which was the original, and the second, the newly founded and engaged since the end of 2021, the 169 Paraphernalia Walking Project. It's not meant for folks, younger people, to, it's more for parents, guardians, loved ones, professionals, educators. But, if it comes up, I use information sometimes provided by younger people because I am not that person any longer. And I was not blessed with having children. I am given the opportunity to help other people with theirs. So the Walking Project, 169 Walking Project, it was created after the Paraphernalia Project, the original, because it was intended to enlighten those folks in Connecticut to make them aware that all towns are affected. I'm not pointing fingers on how they're affected, but I do take into consideration there's a supply and demand circumstance in how each town is affected. I'd like to be able to go deeper in how I catalog information because it's pretty informative. But this is what I have right now. Everything that I have picked up off the ground. If you're not aware, that's what you're seeing behind me. Those are just some of the walks. And at this point now are just about reaching 80 miles in total. And that's not all 169 towns. That's repetitively in some towns for another look into the concerns. But it is probably 40 different towns at this point. I believe there's at least 40 towns that have been, and the amount of walks at this point in time that have been cataloged is 79 point something. So we're just about 80 miles into the walk. And everything is cataloged. This is part of the educational and documentation resource that we have available because I know data is super important. So I'm just going to jump in. This was the first walk I did because I know that within the Ledgely district, which I am so grateful to have had and continue to build relations with Carolyn. And even she just recently was one of my loyal and long-term volunteers for the 3 days that were at the Mohegan Sun at the Connecticut Barber Expo, where this year we passed out 60 Narcan kits, over 120 drug disposal bags, and then bags of resources for opportunities for people that have additional questions, or places in how to get to other locations that they can look up things on their own. So this was I did just a couple weeks ago in Waterford. It was 1.6 miles on Route 1, other known as the Boston Post Road, and no name is directly connected to the outcome. It just gives you a directional idea of where I am when walking. So I was outside of on this road near Stone Heights Estates, and then I walked 0.8 miles down to a closed Dunkin' Donuts. I don't think it's operating anymore, but it was in that parking lot that I had my car. So I walked down 0.8 miles and then back 0.8 miles, which is how you get a collective number of 1.6 miles. And in this, I elaborate on the next slides because it's a lot to see. It's the nipper bottles and then the collective miscellaneous things in the middle, and then bottles and cans to the right. So what I pick up is not all garbage, which is really heavy on my heart some days. Some days are worse than others. I pick things up that I believe are directly related to addiction, completely knowing that cigarettes, food, scratch tickets, even some energy drinks. I know other things can be considered addictive behaviors and or substances for some, but I pick up things that are more related to the nipper bottles, which you'll see. I'm going to give you some cataloged information. So I will further go into the fact that that walk, which totaled 1.6 miles, had 98 nipper bottles. I'm also going to say that on the 2 walks that I did do, one here in Waterford and a short one in Old Lyme, that the streets look to have been not long prior swept and or mowed. So there may be less available to me, or squashed in and I couldn't get it, or sent off into the side of the road that I wasn't going to go in and find it. So right now in this particular walk, 1.6 miles, 98 nipper bottles, and then devices that were in that other box cover. There is 6 vaping devices, also known as EDS or electronic delivery systems, as I talked to the prevention world as well. The wrappers of those devices. So if you were to see them like I see them, they don't always line up either, right? So it may be a cap, a cover, a wrapper of a device, but it's not the one that I found, right? I could find the wrapper of it and I didn't find the device, or I found the device and not the wrapper. So I just look at it as more. The nicotine pouch cans, it's been brought to my attention, especially by some coaches that I'm not sure the actual company name, but one pouch in particular has been gaining popularity with the kids because of its high concentrate in use with sports enhancing. I think that's the way I'm able to say it. Or just use and addictive. It's nicotine. It's not an easy thing to quit. Medicated assisted therapies or medicated assisted treatments are 2 different ways of saying MAT. In the wrappers like Suboxone and buprenorphine in their organizational, like Suboxone is a company name and the product would be buprenorphine along with naloxone. So that's an MAT product. And there are others, but these are the ones that I find on the side of the road. Blunt wrappers, which can mean many different things, and that's expanded on in the cataloged file because it can also mean rolling papers and a couple other things that is added in for this purpose and picture. One harm reduction sterile water, which is in this picture, and it's its own conversation and super important conversation to have when it comes to harm reduction. So sterile water is a part of a harm reduction kit, which I think is fantastic. If I find it on the road and I know it's being used, that I can actually provide hope and education, and someone has opportunity to choose recovery, or at least maybe use more safely if they're not choosing to recover as of yet. And in this particular walk, I only found one piece of a heroin wrapper. It was also one of those very windy days. So wherever I find a piece or one heroin wrapper or bag, one bag is a bag and 10 bags is a bundle. I don't think I've ever believed that there'll be one bag of anything anywhere or one piece. So there's more pieces, but on a windy day, I don't know where this stuff goes, but it is there. And this particular walk, I only found one piece. And then from a dispensary, I found a cannabis container that's more towards the top middle that I had found. And it's always bizarre to me because I believe that any of the MAT products and some of the dispensary products, the people are, or prescription bottles, people in, what's the other one? Methadone bottles, they have their names on them. So I always was kind of blown away that they just haul them out the window and they have their names on them. This is that box that has all the paraphernalia in it, and it was a lot to be listed in that last slide. So I brought it a little bit closer so you can see some of what I was talking about. And then again, you have Carolyn to your resource, you have myself as a resource, and most any of your prevention folks or task force people, public health departments, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. Many people have a good understanding of what may be in this picture, but if you don't, you can always ask us for support and direction. And I do bottle caps and covers too, for the same reason when I had talked about if I find a bottle or a nipper and it doesn't have a cap or a cover, you know what I mean? It's just more. And it's also rotting on the side of the road. I can add that too. So 9 bottles and cans were in those covers in addition to the other stuff that you saw. This is the old Lime Walk. And as you can see, I did it yesterday, last night, prior to the beautiful sunset. This walk was in total of half a mile. So it was 2.5 miles in one direction, which was the tip end of Sill Lane. And I walked straight down all the way to the edge of Griswold Avenue. And I want to say that is another form of Route 1, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% positive, and I'm realizing I didn't write it right now. So my apologies for that. And I see that there is the 5 of the medicated assisted therapy wrappers to the left, bottle caps, 1 vape cover, bottles and cans, and then the nippers, which I can't see. You can have to share with me. I think it's 60 nipper bottles in that half a mile. And I know some of those were pressed, so I'm assuming it was recently mowed if they were pressed into the mud side of the road. So the paraphernalia, how it project, this was the original start of the project. So this is how it came about, and that was because of the support groups, the hope and support groups that I was already facilitating in Wallingford, Connecticut, starting in 2013 when I started it. Being that I'm not a parent, I look to the parents to, ask me questions that they might be curious about. And the things are that I'm hearing regularly that the disease utilizes to hold them hostage. And that's how I like to say it, because remember the shame and the guilt and the lack of information, just being naive to what it is that they're dealing with and how they've been tangled into the whole pool of addiction. And it's just crazy. But so the support groups, I was hearing people say they just didn't know. And if they knew, what would they have done next, or how could they have addressed it differently? So this is where all the conversations continue to unfold. So the things that are used to produce, consume, or conceal an illegal substance or illegal substance used illegally, that is really important, but it goes further than that. I take it to the over-the-counter products. I look at things that you can purchase online, things that you can find in a wastebasket or a knapsack, in your desk drawers, things that could be right in front of you and you wouldn't know. Hence the fact I wrote that it's created to teach about different, not necessarily meant to teach about the drug, but as the residual of the drug use. But it's inevitable that we're going to talk about drugs and what that may be applicable to, which substance they may be using with that residual that we find. But we talk about signs and symptoms and red flags and all of that. So in addition to The included 169 paraphernalia project stuff that I find, there are 5 glass top boxes with the residuals of substance use. There's over 200 touchable items. And then there's hands-on activities that I can build as requested. Like I can do a knapsack, a pocketbook, a garbage pail, and dump it out. And I can ask you what you may find. PowerPoints that I build specific to your location or intention, or maybe grant-driven circumstances, especially with all the different nipper bottle money that's out there, and any of the eco-friendly and Department of Environmental Protection kind of stuff. And I'm going to stop and say, without even a slide to support it, I think it's important to consider, like with the demographics and data that I have now from just what I've picked up, when it comes to like the heroin wrappers and now more than likely fentanyl wrappers, as of right now, within that 70 miles, I've picked up almost 800 wrappers. Now, knowing what it is that could actually kill someone, that has no tolerance, if there it was rained on and goes into your drinking water. Do you understand my concern with that? Let alone the vaping products, the electronic delivery systems all have batteries, which are also rotting on the side of the road. These are just the additional concerns, let alone it's garbage, it's metal, it's rotting, and it's, that's all these different things. But the projects are very chock full. They can be personalized as needed. And in this particular case, in this particular video, I am giving this to Carolyn for her continued support, which I greatly appreciate. And however we can share it, however it can be utilized, if you choose to copy it or whatever, hey, go for it. If you want to talk about it, go for it. If it's going to help someone, I'm not going to get all jammed up about it. So let's go to the next slide, which is part of the original Paraphernalia project. So this is how it all came out the gate. I was bringing and putting together PowerPoints to then better explain to folks. Now, this is a Suboxone wrapper, and this is only like snippets. So it's going to go automatically, but I break down each slide so I can help better explain what people may be seeing. It just took it all the way to the side of the road now. This is just specific to marijuana. But then there was at one point in time, things have evolved, including the age, like 18 to 21, when it came to smoking cigarettes and vaping products. And then marijuana wasn't legal. Then it became medically available, and now it is recreationally available. So there's different things that have changed. And this PowerPoint in particular that I drew from has pieces that grow closer, like subsections of the slide. So it's pretty involved. But I pulled these out for purposes in this presentation in particular. Here's a business unbeknownst to any people. The most parents, guardians, loved ones, professionals don't know about the business of clean urine, or urine that actually has the particular components of either medicated assisted therapy or other medications that someone may be on, and why someone would save it, and their intentions. How would it be purchased, and things like that are all open dialogue, including like the drug tests and things, how to read them. Vaping products, cigarettes, things like that, out of control. We just don't know, because when we talk about it, when it originally started, it was majority wise nicotine, but now with marijuana, we go to the higher concentrates of THC, which can be wax, dab, oils, and then the other names. There's so many names, shatter, I don't know, but and then other things that can be added in, and the different delivery systems, meaning electronic, but the different ways to ingest nicotine, let alone what's not in any of my slides. It's caffeine too. So there's a powder form of caffeine that some people can possibly ingest as well. This, a lot of people don't know about. Mr. Creamy is just one of the companies, and I buy a box. This is a box of 24 cartridges, which goes into that product open in this slide. It's called a breaker. And that's nitrous, like you would get from a whipped cream can. So if you've ever gone to the refrigerator and there is no oomph left in your can, somebody has more than likely sucked the nitrous out of it. And that would be considered old school whippet. But when it comes to the now, I find nitrous cartridges on the side of the road. So, I mean, it's not often, but I do have a number collected from the side of the road. So it's still being utilized. And I think it's more utilized demographically, but not solely, but from data shows like the LGBTQ. There's also a Rush product. So that's just what I've been told. It kind of lines up more so with. Just not anything can be used by anybody, but it seems to be more favored. This is something that more highlights crack cocaine. So crack is cocaine. It's a stimulant, but it's in a format that you're able to smoke it. And when I find the flower, which you see inside that glass tube, that would be paraphernalia to me, even more so than the glass tube itself. And I say that because I'm looking for things that might not otherwise be red flags, right? So the chore boy is what's inside a crack pipe as a filter when smoking crack. So there's things in this, like when a cooked filter has been overused and taken out, it's very brittle. So sparkly things in the carpets can be seen, or the little, it looks like a little plug. So there's different things in this picture that they're red flags to me. So hopefully I can educate others. Over the counter products and why I talk about some of this too, when folks, particularly with opioids, when they're withdrawing and the discomfort of that is why a lot of people stay so trapped with an active addiction, is the great discomfort of withdrawal. Some of these things may help in some slight way to subside the withdrawal symptoms, the nausea, the diarrhea, the runny nose, the itchy eyes, the poor sleep, all of those things. So when I see things like this that may be collective, Imodium used to be called the poor man's methadone. There's some compound within Imodium that has a minimal way to satiate the opioid receptor in the brain. So I know people have drank it and drank a lot of it and actually gets to a toxic level, but I never knew that Imodium had that effect. So it's just one of those things, trying to subside a withdrawal symptom. So I bring up TriCircle to this conversation. Again, they were both created. I am the founder of both, but this is a 501c3 now, which, I've given the rights to the logo and everything. We have funded by Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, hope and support groups, and fortunately, hope after loss groups. Specific to this presentation, though, I am referring to the hope and support groups because it is a safe place. Both of them are, but a safe place that for folks to come and ask questions or really, talk about their concerns and the how to help a loved one or someone in their life, a friend, and if they are affected. So we want to make sure that people know that these groups are made available at no cost and that there are 2 paid professionals in each group. And again, that is funded by Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, those groups specifically, not the whole organization. I think, oh yeah, that's the last one where I say thank you to the folks that helped me to originally create the TriCircle Restorations Paraphernalia project. And then it evolved, as I said, to the whatchamading-dong there, 169 Walking Project. So let me not share anymore and then see if Carolyn, with that burst of information, has any additional questions.
So the first thing that comes to mind on it is in prevention, we sometimes talk about environmental scans.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember several years ago when you were first getting the Paraphernalia project organized,
Mm-hmm.
I had you come to Groton and present. And the people who attended were, really pleased with the presentation. They learned a lot. And now it's great to see that not only is that kept going, but you're also doing this really interesting 169 project,
Mm-hmm.
which is these walks, environmental scans, if you will, that can be used for education, of course, but also awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really terrific what you're doing. I think it's very unique. We do see, environmental cleanups all the time. Our friends over at CCAR have the Orca program. They like to clean up beaches. As a matter of fact, there's one happening in Groton on June 9th over at Esker Point. So I think there's a renewed interest in community cleanups in general.
Mhm,
But what's really great about this is it really talks about, how you can get a little bit of a window into what people might be going through, you know, and, talking about how some of these things don't really break down environmentally. You mentioned batteries and electronic nicotine delivery systems, which can be a problem. I know some people flush them down the toilet, which is a horrible issue because those jam up the system. I have heard people tell me about that. Um, but people, talk about, just the alcohol containers and the nips and everything. And we do
mhm,
know that there is this nip tax now that
mhm,
goes back to the communities, and they can use it for environmental purposes such as this
mhm,
cleanups, paraphernalia walks, all different kinds of things. So,
mhm,
um, thank you again for sharing this. It's really wonderful what you're doing and how you're collecting data from it. I
mhm.
think it's really unique, and I love unique and creative things. And I know that you're a very authentic, genuine person. So thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. And if anybody who's seeing this wants to get a hold of you to ask questions or to get more information about your services, how can they reach you?
Well, thanks for that. And I'll say that my cell phone number is on everything. So feel free, have at it. And it's the same for both companies. There are additional numbers available on both of those websites that were in the beginning of the presentation. My cell is 203-213-0329. And I'm just going to expand on a hot second too regarding the towns. It's tough to agree to the fact that this is a reality, right? And it's all towns that are affected. I look at the supply or demand potential because, and I wondered if the different directions on the sides of the roads, if it wasn't so windy, if one would speak volumes to the other if you're coming or going, because a lot of the times they're throughways that I'm hitting between towns. So that would what brought to light the potential of supply or demand. But the cleaning up and is I adore the fact that there is water side, water edge cleanups being done with Orca and CCAR. That's great. But I also take into consideration the safety purposes for one. But second, as much as it's important to clean things up, I really want to send home the fact that that's a symptom of a bigger problem. And that the conversation that's needed is because I don't even see drugs as the problem or a substance or behavior being utilized. I see it as a symptom to an older problem, right? And just the system isn't capable of achieving the long-term safety for folks in time to heal a brain, let alone get to the story before the story. So I'm intending to move forward to create something that would provide that opportunity, but having platforms like this and people like you that look to continue to educate people, parents, guardians, loved ones, families, school systems, professionals. I am entirely indebted and grateful for that because what I do may be creative. And as you can see, if you saw my whole garage, there's over 100 and something walks in here, and I'm picking up garbage, but it's clean garbage now and sorted. So anybody that I can help and open a dialogue with or concern, if it's not within just this presentation and doing a presentation, the support groups are available to you as well. So thank you, Carolyn, always.
Thank you so much, Anna, for taking the time on a Friday right before Memorial Weekend. And with that, we will finish today's talk. And again, thank you, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you.